What if you could inherit skills from your relatives? So the question is, does DNA pass on skills? You can look at a family and feel like the answer is obvious. A father with perfect rhythm, a daughter who hears music once and somehow finds the notes, a grandfather who worked with wood, hands precise and patient, and decades later a grandson shaping things with the same strange instinct. It feels like something passed through blood, not just eye color, not just height. Something deeper, something almost like memory. So when a skill appears to run in a family, what are we really looking at? The obvious answer is DNA. It sounds clean, simple, and almost magical. If your parents were talented, maybe the code was already there. Maybe the violinist passes on music. Maybe the fighter passes on courage. Maybe the builder passes on the hand. In that view, skill is almost like inheritance in the literal sense, stored somewhere in the body before life even begins, waiting to unfold. And this idea feels reasonable because genes clearly do matter. They shape the body, influence the brain, affect things like reaction speed, muscle composition, sensitivity to sound, attention, memory, and even some broad tendencies in personality and cognition. So it is not irrational to think that a skill might also be passed on the same way. If DNA can help shape intelligence, coordination, temperament, and physical ability, then maybe it can also carry the finished product. Maybe excellence itself can travel forward. But this doesn't explain something important. If skills were inherited in that direct way, children of brilliant people would reliably become brilliant in the same specific things. The daughter of a pianist would sit at the piano and already contain the music. The son of a carpenter would somehow know the movement before practice. But that is not what reality looks like. What we actually see is messier. Some gifted parents have children with no interest or talent in the same domain. Some ordinary families produce someone exceptional out of nowhere. And many people who look naturally talented still needed thousands of hours before anyone noticed them. And this is where it starts to break. Because what we call skill is not one thing. Skill is not a single object that could be packed into DNA and shipped to the next generation. Skill is usually a layered structure built from many smaller traits interacting over time. A great musician may have auditory sensitivity, pattern recognition, emotional responsiveness, patience for repetition, access to instruments, a home where music is normal, and years of early exposure. A great athlete may have limb proportions, fast twitch muscle bias, motivation, tolerance for discomfort, competitiveness, coaching, and opportunity. What looks like one inherited gift may actually be a convergence of many influences, only some of which are genetic. This matters because genes do not pass down a finished ability like playing piano or speaking 3 languages or drawing anatomy. They pass down biological tendencies that can make certain kinds of learning easier, harder, faster, or more rewarding. DNA is less like a memory card and more like a set of probabilities. It shapes the kind of nervous system you begin with, not the exact life that system will build. That distinction changes everything. Research on heritability shows that many traits related to performance and behavior are partly influenced by genetics, including aspects of intelligence, athletic potential, personality, and non-cognitive traits like self-regulation. But heritability is often misunderstood. It does not mean a trait is fixed, and it definitely does not mean a person inherits completed skills. It means genetic differences help explain some of the variation between people in a given environment. That is a very different claim. There is another layer that makes the illusion even stronger. Families do not only pass on genes, they also pass on worlds. A child raised around books inherits something, but not necessarily in the DNA. A child raised around music inherits listening habits, language, expectations, emotional associations, attention patterns. A child who watches a parent repair machines, negotiate with people, manage frustration, or move with physical confidence is absorbing systems long before they understand what they are seeing. Culture, routine, stress, values, and exposure travel through generations with extraordinary force. Sometimes what looks inherited is actually rehearsed, not consciously, just constantly. And even the environment is not fully separate from genetics. Parents with certain genetically influenced traits often create certain kinds of homes. A disciplined parent may create a structured environment. An anxious parent may create a more vigilant one. A musical parent may fill the house with rhythm and repetition. So the child receives both biology and a world shaped by biology. That can make genes look more powerful than they are if you only look from a distance. Then there is the most seductive part of this whole idea, epigenetics. This is where many people start to imagine that experiences themselves can be written back into the body and transmitted. And to be fair, the idea is not pure fantasy. Biological systems do respond to experience. Stress, nutrition, toxins, and other conditions can affect gene expression. In animals, there is evidence that some environmentally influenced epigenetic effects can echo across generations. In humans, there are hints and serious lines of research, especially around stress and development. But this area is often exaggerated. The current evidence does not support the simple idea that learned, specific skills are being encoded and passed down like a secret upgrade. Whatever intergenerational biological effects may exist, they are not the same thing as inherited piano lessons, or inherited welding, or inherited chess. And that is the reversal. The question is not whether DNA passes on skills. The deeper answer is that DNA can shape the kind of organism that acquires certain skills more easily, while family life, environment, repetition, and culture shape whether those potentials are ever expressed. What gets passed on is not skill as a finished artifact. It is a bias, a landscape, a set of doors that may open more easily in some people than in others. And sometimes, what we mistake for inherited talent is really inherited exposure made invisible by how early it began. That is less mystical than the original idea, but in some ways more unsettling, because it means the phrase, "it runs in the family," can hide several very different realities. It can mean a shared body. It can mean a shared home. It can mean shared stress, shared values, shared access, shared assumptions about what is normal. It can even mean that a person was praised for something early, repeated it more, got slightly better, received more reinforcement, and eventually looked gifted from the outside. What appears to be destiny may be a loop, and this becomes personal very quickly, because many people use genetic stories to explain themselves long before the evidence justifies it. They say talent is in their blood, or they say it is not. They assume they were born for something, or born excluded from it. One person leans on ancestry as proof they should be good. Another uses family history as proof they never will be. Both may be mistaking a starting condition for a verdict. The uncomfortable truth is that biology matters, but rarely in the dramatic way people want. It matters enough to make people different, not enough to save them from development, not enough to replace practice, not enough to guarantee expression. Two people can begin with different ceilings, different sensitivities, different learning curves, but most real-life performance is still built through contact with a world, not extracted intact from a chromosome. So the useful question is no longer, was this skill passed down to me? It becomes, what exactly was passed down? Was it a nervous system with certain strengths, a body with certain constraints, a household pattern, a fear, a permission structure, a language of effort, a model of what adults do, a silence around art, a reverence for discipline, a room full of instruments, a life with no time to explore? That question is harder, but it is far more honest. Because once you stop imagining inheritance as a magical transfer of finished abilities, you begin to see the real architecture of human development. You see that potential is not fake, but it is also not fate. You see that some people begin closer to certain doors, while others may have to walk farther just to find them. You see that family resemblance can come from code, imitation, repetition, environment, and expectation all fused together until they become indistinguishable. And maybe that is the point. What passes through generations is often not a skill, but a pattern that makes a skill more likely to appear. A condition, a direction, a bias in the system. Which means the most important inheritance may not be what your DNA already wrote, but what your life keeps teaching your biology to become. Lucid order. Question everything.